In today's world, strength is often misunderstood. Too many believe they have a strong mind, but confuse overthinking with awareness, control with clarity, and silence with discipline. True strength is restraint. It's the man who pauses when others lash out, the one who holds himself when the world tries to break him. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So the question is, do you rule your mind, or flinch every time uncertainty shows up? Have you ever felt the urge to say no but said yes anyway? You knew it wasn't right. You knew it would drain you, but still, you agreed. Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to disappoint, explain, or be alone. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But instead of standing your ground, you shrink. You comply. You disappear inside routines that aren't yours. A strong mind isn't about force, it's about refusal. The refusal to betray yourself for comfort, approval, or false peace. This video isn't about motivation, it's about confrontation with the part of you that keeps saying yes while quietly screaming no. A weak mind doesn't collapse from catastrophe. It fractures under tone, under delay, under interpretation. It doesn't need disaster to unravel. Sometimes, all it takes is an eyebrow slightly raised in a room you weren't prepared to be in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ask yourself, what is so unbearable here? Why can't I endure it?" But most people never ask. They assume every ounce of inner friction must be justified, that the body's alarm is always right, always moral. But the truth is, the body panics out of habit, not out of wisdom, and the weak mind follows it, into apology, into argument, into submission or withdrawal, all before understanding the context. You assume someone's silence is rejection. You treat a pause like a power play. You become an expert in reading imaginary hostility, and you call it intuition. Aurelius warned, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Yet you spend hours, even days, replaying the words and moods of people who don't know your mind, your life, or your intentions. The weak mind isn't slow. It's impatient. It wants answers now, resolution now, confirmation now. It speaks first, regrets later, builds walls, then wonders why it's lonely. It confuses impulse with instinct, believing the fastest emotion is always the truest. But truth doesn't panic. Clarity takes time, and self-possession begins with refusal. Aurelius said, "Don't return to philosophy as a task, but as a relief." But you treat it like a quote to post, not a way to live. The reactive mind feeds off momentum. It needs a villain. It needs drama. It turns the minor into the existential, not because it's weak, but because it fears stillness more than suffering. You've mistaken kindness for erasure, accommodation for maturity. But a strong mind doesn't serve everyone. It chooses carefully who it carries. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never regard something as doing you good if it makes you betray a trust, or lose your sense of shame, or makes you show hatred, suspicion, or hypocrisy, or desire for things best done behind closed doors." But you betray yourself daily, not with malice, but with chronic permission, saying yes to things you don't value, to preserve peace that doesn't exist. You're afraid of confrontation, so you confront yourself instead. You're afraid to offend, so you live offended by your own compliance. You're not tired because you're busy, you're tired because you perform. "A man must stand erect," Aurelius said, "not be kept erect by others." But you bend, to be liked, to be asked again, to be seen as capable. The mind weakens each time you act against its judgment. Every yes that comes from fear trains your nervous system to accept distortion as safety. You think strength means endurance. But sometimes strength is exit. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's the power to say, "This is not my role to play." Is a world without shamelessness possible? Marcus asks. No, but you can refuse to be a part of it. When you say yes to everything, you become responsible for nothing. When you please everyone, no one trusts your word. Not even you. A strong mind doesn't over-explain. It doesn't chase approval. It recognizes that guilt is not a guide. It's a withdrawal symptom from a life lived too far from the self. He who follows reason in all things is both tranquil and active at the same time, Aurelius wrote. Not passive, not apologetic, not addicted to being needed. So next time you say yes, ask yourself, who am I betraying right now, and who am I trying to impress? Strength isn't how much you lift, it's how much you don't drop when life turns silent. It's not loud. It doesn't shout its achievements. It holds its ground in quiet rooms when no one is clapping and no one is checking in. You want proof of progress, but real growth is invisible. It's when you don't react to the things that once fractured your weak. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But modern strength flips that. We've become lenient with our impulses and merciless with the world. We call emotions overwhelming, but never ask why they overwhelm. We claim burnout, but never inspect the architecture of our exhaustion. You want a break, but you've never mastered stillness. You want space, but your mind fills every gap with imagined battles. A strong mind isn't reactive, it's regulated, not by suppression, but by observation. When you arise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy. You dismiss this as poetic, but maybe the problem isn't the message. Maybe it's your hunger for chaos. You say you're overwhelmed, but refuse to simplify. You crave peace, but romanticize urgency. You think strength is shown through motion, but real strength is how still you can remain when everything else speeds up. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That alone would eliminate 90% of your exhaustion. You hold on to drama because it keeps you relevant in circles that vanish when you choose silence. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. But instead of going inward, you go online. You go reactive. You go everywhere but inward. You think strength is about pressure, but it's about precision. You don't need to push more. You need to carry less. And maybe you're not weak at all. Maybe you're just overcommitted to the performance of power instead of the practice of it. Most people never think. They react, they rehearse, they remember, but they don't actually think. Because thinking, real thinking, is discipline. It's quiet, it's uncomfortable. It asks you to look beyond your first emotion. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But you've turned your mind into a mirror, reflecting everything around you. You don't use it as a filter. You don't use it as a tool. You repeat arguments. You absorb fears. You chase goals that were never yours, then blame the world when they don't make you feel whole. The undisciplined mind collects everything. It stores every insult, every delay. Then it replays them at night, like suffering will somehow create a strategy. But what have your thoughts actually built? What have they resolved? Where have they taken you, besides in circles?" Marcus said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What color are yours? What shape do they take? What kind of world are they reinforcing every day? You keep waiting for clarity to arrive, But clarity doesn't come. It's created. It's the result of resisting chaos, not running from it. The undisciplined mind rushes into everything. It finds urgency in all things, but meaning in nothing. Aurelius said, "If someone can show me that I'm wrong, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, and no one was ever harmed by the truth." But you don't really seek truth. You seek to win. You seek to be right. You want to confirm, not question. You want to argue, not grow. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about the courage to stop halfway through a sentence and say, "No, that's no longer true for me." It's about deleting beliefs that once helped you, but no longer serve you. Marcus also said, "Very little is needed to live a happy life." But we complicate everything. Because complexity hides indecision. It feeds the ego. It helps us avoid hard choices. A strong mind isn't full. It's focused. It doesn't overthink. It rewrites. It doesn't collect thoughts. It directs them. It trains the mind to serve your life, not pull you away from it. And finally, the best revenge, Marcus said, is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So the next time your mind starts to spiral, ask yourself, do I need to be right, or do I need to be wise? You've spent years building what the world could applaud, but not what your soul could live with. They told you to be everything, so you became everyone. You adjusted your tone, your pace, your path, just to fit into environments that never saw you clearly. You made yourself acceptable, palatable, manageable, but none of it felt like truth. At some point, strength becomes subtraction. Not adding more roles, but removing the ones that never fit. Not performing louder, but listening deeper. You don't need to reinvent. You need to return, not to a past version of you, but to the one you silenced, the one who didn't perform, didn't overextend, didn't apologize for existing, the one who didn't edit themselves just to be invited. Marcus Aurelius said, "The only thing that isn't worthless is to live this life out truthfully and rightly, and be patient with those who don't." You silenced your needs to keep the peace and called that maturity. But the cost was your wholeness. Most people don't actually want peace. They want control that looks like peace. They plan every move like their life depends on it. They replay every conversation in their head. They analyze every possible outcome. Not because they're brilliant tacticians, but because they're afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of feeling helpless in a world that doesn't follow their script. So they try to outsmart life, stay one step ahead, overpower the chaos. But here's the twist. The more you try to control everything, the more it ends up controlling you. You can plan your day perfectly, but you can't plan how someone will treat you. You can eat clean every meal and still feel sick. You can do everything the right way and still have people misunderstand you. Control feels safe, but it becomes a prison. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." Strength isn't about getting your way. It's about staying steady when everything's falling apart. Real peace doesn't come from control. It comes from capacity. The capacity to breathe through pain, to act through fear, to choose direction when your emotions scream chaos. Like he said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But control doesn't teach you that. It teaches you to avoid discomfort, not to grow from it. It says eliminate the obstacle, not become stronger because of it. But the strongest minds, they don't crave certainty. They seek alignment. A stillness that doesn't crack under pressure. A goal that doesn't depend on the weather of circumstance. You don't need to hold the whole world together. Just one thing, how you meet this moment. Receive without pride. Let go without attachment. That's not weakness, that's power. the kind that doesn't panic, doesn't grip too tight, because it's not trying to force life, it knows how to flow with it. Some people are led by intuition, others by values, but many are led by guilt. Not truth, not clarity, just the haunting pressure to feel bad for having boundaries. You say no, then apologize for it. You ask for space, then shrink from your own need. You've been taught that guilt means you did something wrong. But guilt is not guidance. It's a reflex, a leftover signal from when pleasing others meant survival. You don't feel guilty because you're unkind. You feel guilty because you're growing, because you're separating who you are from who you were told to be. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But guilt poisons those thoughts, turns every decision into a courtroom, turns self-respect into a crime. Guilt isn't always a signal to do better. Sometimes it's a test, to see if you'll betray yourself again to win approval that doesn't last. Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears. When someone is disappointed in you, it doesn't always mean you've harmed them. Sometimes it just means you've stopped letting them manipulate you. You keep mistaking discomfort for wrongdoing. You think if it feels heavy, it must be wrong. But not every weight is yours to carry. Some guilt isn't yours. It was handed to you by religion, by family, by culture, and you've been holding it like it's sacred. But guilt isn't sacred. It's a mirror. And sometimes what you see is just your fear of being misunderstood. Now is the time to get serious about living your ideals. Not living to be liked, not living to be needed, but living in line with your truth, even when guilt knocks, even when your old patterns beg you to stay soft. Because guilt fades, but self-betrayal echoes. You waste years explaining yourself, trying to prove that your choices make sense, that your boundaries are reasonable, that your silence is not hostility. But a strong mind doesn't beg to be understood. It accepts being misread. Because clarity doesn't always echo back, and growth isn't always visible to the people you're growing away from. You've confused being understood with being safe. But safety doesn't come from agreement, it comes from alignment. You don't need everyone to get it. You need to get it. Because the more you try to explain yourself to the wrong audience, the more you forget who you were before you needed their permission. Marcus Aurelius said, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." And yet most people live to be included, to be approved of, to not upset the room. But a strong mind walks out of rooms where it has to shrink. It chooses truth over reputation, stillness over validation. Not everyone will understand your silence. Not everyone will respect your refusal, and that's okay, because understanding isn't the goal. Confine yourself to the present. Most people don't misunderstand you for who you are. They misunderstand you for who they need you to be. You say no, they call it selfish. You change, they call it fake. You distance, they call it cold. But that's not your burden. You don't owe them your reasoning. You don't owe them your inner life. Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Your job is not to be decoded. Your job is to be aligned, to choose what's real, even when it's quiet. Even when it's lonely, even when no one claps for it, because truth doesn't need to be proven. It only needs to be lived. You've been told to speak your mind, to clap back, to stand your ground at all costs. But power isn't always expression. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's walking away without a speech. Restraint isn't weakness. It's clarity with boundaries. Not everything needs a response. Not every insult deserves your energy. Not every conflict is worth entering. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best answer to anger is silence." Because most anger isn't righteous, it's reactive. It's the wounded ego searching for a stage. But a strong mind doesn't perform, it observes. It doesn't bark back at every critic. It doesn't make everything personal. When you fight every battle, you lose your inner ground. You become so busy defending your name, you forget to protect your peace. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? You've seen this firsthand. How one sentence said in heat can ruin trust. How one outburst can define your character. People think holding back is fear, but restraint is actually the purest form of command. You don't rise to every invitation to chaos. You stand still. You remain unshaken, not because you're passive, but because your energy is sacred. The people who pull you out of character don't deserve to shape your story. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It's messy, it's grounded, it's full of tension that doesn't always resolve. But in that tension, you learn to breathe, to watch, to hold, to choose. Restraint isn't silence out of fear, it's silence out of power. It's knowing that you don't need to win this moment. You just need to not lose yourself in it. You keep searching for safety in people, in timing, in achievement, but the strongest form of protection is built inside, not from walls, but from wisdom. You think you need a plan, a breakthrough, a perfect version of yourself. But what you actually need is a place to stand inside your own mind, a place no crisis can enter, no insult can define. Marcus Aurelius said, "You are a little soul carrying around a corpse. And still you live like your power is outside of you, like your peace depends on how they treat you, like your self-worth is something to be earned in the open. But your life begins when your validation ends, when your identity isn't negotiated in every room, when your inner world isn't shaped by their reactions, because there will always be noise. There will always be misunderstanding. There will always be pressure to bend, but none of it can touch you if you've built something solid inside. Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. You think you need to become someone else, but really, you just need to return to what's always been buried beneath the noise. Calm isn't something you find. It's something you protect. Clarity isn't a moment. It's a standard. You don't build an inner fortress in ease. You build it through storms. By choosing not to panic, not to retaliate, not to betray your values when they're tested. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. So start here, not with perfection, but with presence. Build a place inside you that doesn't flinch, that doesn't beg, that doesn't bend just to belong. A place you can return to when the world forgets who you are, but you remember. So here's what remains. If your mind is undisciplined, if you let emotion, comparison, fear, and noise run unchecked, the world will shape you without asking for your permission. You'll live a story you didn't write, following expectations you didn't question, chasing goals that were handed to you before you even had the chance to understand yourself. But if your mind is strong, steady, and self-directed, everything changes. You begin to design a life that's not just impressive, but honest. You begin to notice what drains you, what distorts you, what steals your peace, and you stop offering those things your attention. Strength isn't loud, it's quiet and deliberate. It's restraint. It's the power to stay grounded when everything around you wants you scattered. It's walking away without explaining yourself. It's staying calm in rooms that want you reactive. It's saying no without guilt, because you finally understand that your energy is not unlimited. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That's not just a quote, it's a standard. What are you allowing into your mind daily? What are you replaying, absorbing, scrolling past, agreeing to without awareness? If you want clarity, simplify. If you want peace, create boundaries. If you want purpose, stop borrowing it. Strength is not about how much pressure you can take. It's about knowing what's worth carrying in the first place. Most people waste their lives defending a version of themselves they never chose. Don't be one of them. You don't need to keep proving your worth to people who only value performance. Give up the need to explain every boundary, to justify every exit, to constantly prove you are enough. Strength is not built by performing harder. It's built by coming home to the part of you that never needed to perform in the first place.